Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we help you get really well informed on important topics. We take a bunch of sources, articles, videos, notes, whatever you give us, and pull out the key stuff.
Yeah, we dive in so you don't have to drown in all the info. We're here to guide you through it, find the crucial bits, the practical advice.
And as always, this deep dive is sponsored by the Siblings of Solidarity of Local 509. We really want to give a special shout out this time to S.O.S members Farron and Brian Giles. They're out of the Palmetto building.
Wow, Farron and Brian Giles, good guys. Strong Teamsters, definitely.
Absolutely. Two strong Teamsters. You know, their support, it's a great reminder of, well, sticking together, solidarity.
It really is. And actually, that theme of solidarity ties right into what we're digging into today.
It does, doesn't it? So today we're doing a deep dive into something super important, especially if you're working somewhere like UPS. We're talking about how to handle harassment and retaliation for management.
And all the insights we're sharing, they come directly from the sources you provided for us. The experiences, the advice, the union guides people have shared.
Exactly. Now, this topic, it can bring up some strong feelings, right? Frustration, maybe anger.
For sure.
But we're going to try to approach this calmly, like the sources suggest. Use simple words, ask some important questions, and really get to the core of what's going on.
Our goal today, our mission, is pretty straightforward. First, understand the strategies management might use as described in this material. But more importantly, focus on the strategies workers can use.
Practical steps, things you can actually do to protect yourself, defend your rights, and, fight back effectively.
We're sticking only to what's in these sources. We've got tips from experienced workers, discussions from online videos, union guides. It's a good mix.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's get into it. Where do we start? Maybe understanding the landscape first. Like, what is harassment at a place like UPS, according to these sources? And maybe the big question, why does it happen?
Right. So one of the first things that jumps out from the material is this idea that harassment isn't usually seen as just, an accident or a few bad apples.
Okay. So what is it then?
It's often described as a deliberate strategy, a calculated approach.
A strategy. Wow. Okay. That changes things. What do they call this strategy?
The term that keeps coming up is management by stress.
Management by stress. Huh.
Yeah. And interestingly, the sources say it didn't even start at UPS. It apparently came from Toyota's manufacturing methods, and then companies like UPS adopted it.
Okay, management by stress. What's the point? What's the goal of managing that way based on these sources?
Well, the main objective seems to be boosting productivity. And, profits follow productivity.
Right.
The way they do it is by keeping employees under constant, intense pressure, basically creating an environment where people feel they have to work faster, harder, maybe cut corners.
So how does that pressure actually look day to day? What kind of things are described in the sources?
Several things. Intense monitoring is a big one. Keeping tabs on workers, sometimes with tech, sometimes just supervisors watching closely.
Mm-hmm.
There's the constant demand for more production, always pushing for more packages, more stops, often with less time or fewer people to do the job.
That sounds stressful already.
Oh, yeah.
Oof.
And another tactic mentioned is constantly changing how the work is done. New methods, tweaked procedures. It keeps people off balance.
Always learning something new under pressure.
Exactly. And then there are these revolving campaigns where management will suddenly focus really hard on one specific method or one type of mistake for a while. Just targeted pressure.
Okay, so within this management by stress thing, harassment isn't just noise, it has a purpose. What are the purposes mentioned in the sources?
They highlight a few key ones.
Mm-hmm.
First, intimidation, using it to make workers speed up, work faster than maybe is safe or reasonable.
Okay.
Second, provocation. Try to get under your skin, make you lose your temper, maybe yell back, or make a mistake they can then use against you.
Setting you up almost.
It can feel that way sometimes, yeah. And in the really extreme cases, the sources suggest the harassment is meant to be so bad, so constant, that the worker just gives up. They quit.
Wow. That's pretty heavy. So it's not just about getting work done faster. It could be about pushing people out.
That's the implication in some of the material, yes.
One source even says harassment is like the root of all other issues management uses against union members. Like it's the foundation for everything else.
That's a powerful statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests tackling harassment is fundamental to dealing with other management tactics, too.
It's also important, though, based on what we're reading, to be clear on what isn't necessarily harassment here, like management just telling you your job.
Right. If a supervisor says, hey, I need you to do X, Y, or Z, load this truck, make these deliveries, that's just a work instruction, not harassment in itself.
The difference is how it happens, right? And maybe the intent behind it.
Exactly. That's the distinction the sources seem to draw.
So what is described as harassment then?
Well, things like yelling, screaming at people, fussing constantly, cussing at employees,
Yeah.
that's mentioned.
Okay.
Also, giving instructions that are unsafe or that go against the agreed upon methods or procedures, that's a form of it too.
And there was that really striking comparison in one source.
Yeah. Comparing workplace harassment to domestic violence. Saying abuse is abuse, whether it's at home or on the job, it shouldn't be acceptable anywhere.
That really puts it in perspective, doesn't it? It frames it not just as an annoying boss, but as something fundamentally wrong and harmful.
It highlights the dignity and respect aspect, which, is actually in the contract, Article 37.
Right. Okay, let's pause here for a second. This is a lot to take in. If harassment isn't random, if it's part of this deliberate management by stress strategy, what does that tell us about the environment people are working in? And, maybe more importantly for you listening, how might knowing this, seeing it as a strategy, change how you react, how you approach your day, or deal with a supervisor who's piling on the pressure?
It's a big shift, isn't it? Instead of taking it personally, maybe, or feeling like it's just your boss being a jerk.
You see it as part of a bigger picture.
Yeah. Recognizing it as a system, a tactic. And understanding the system is, like, the first step to figuring out how to deal with it effectively. Less emotion, maybe more strategy on your end, too.
Knowing the why can definitely change the how you respond. Okay, so we've got the landscape, this idea of a strategy. Now let's shift gears to something the sources spend a lot of time on. The common mistakes. The pitfalls. What are the things workers do, maybe instinctively, that the sources say are actually unhelpful? Things that might even play into management's hands.
Right, the what not to do list. This is crucial. The first major pitfall they identify is basically making it easy for them.
Making it easy for management. How would someone do that?
Well, the sources explain it like this. If you're not following the contract yourself, or if you're not sticking to the company's official methods and procedures, the things they call cardinal sins sometimes, because they can lead to quick discipline.
You're giving them ammunition.
Exactly. You're handing them legitimate, on-paper reasons to come after you.
What kind of mistakes are we talking about? Specific examples.
Oh, there are plenty mentioned. Not taking your breaks correctly, or your lunch, skipping them, cutting them short, taking them at the wrong time.
Okay.
Inaccurate paperwork, or messing up entries on the DID, like scanning a package delivered when you're not actually at the address. That's a big one they mentioned.
Right. Falsification.
Yeah. Or letting late or missed packages turn into a dishonesty issue because you didn't handle the situation or the paperwork right.
So the core advice here is don't give them easy shots.
Pretty much. Follow the rules yourself.
Yep.
Work safe, work smart, practice the methods every day. For inside folks, that means focusing on safety, good sorting, good loading, protecting the packages.
If you're clean, they have to dig a lot harder.
That's the idea. Okay, pitfall number 2, the sources warn about. Overreacting or letting it get under your skin visibly.
Showing them it's working.
Exactly. Remember, harassment is often used to get a specific result. The sources say if their tactic isn't getting them what they want, like if yelling at you doesn't make you speed up, they might actually stop doing it to you.
So try to keep your cool. Don't let them see they've rattled you.
To the extent you can, yeah. And here's the really negative consequence they point out. If you do react the way they want, say, you get harassed or called into the office, and then you immediately start working faster, maybe running your route, your numbers suddenly jump.
You've just taught them something.
You've just told them that harassment works on you. You've reinforced their behavior. You've shown them that pressure gets results from you.
Oof. That's a tough cycle to break. And for inside workers, there's another point about not playing into their hands. Something about coworkers.
Right. If management is pressuring the whole group about production or mistakes, the advice is don't start blaming each other. Stick together. Support your coworkers. Don't let management divide you.
Unity as a defense. Makes sense. Okay, pitfall number 3. This one seems counterintuitive, maybe. Trying to work extra hard or super fast to avoid being targeted. The they love me scenario.
Yeah, this is a big one the sources really try to debunk. The idea that if you just bust your hump, make incredible numbers, management will appreciate you, value you too much to mess with you.
Or you'll fly under the radar because you're so productive.
Right. The sources say this is a huge, dangerous mistake.
Why? Why is being the star employee a mistake in this context?
Because almost always, working that extra fast or harder means you're working incorrectly. You're probably working off the clock, skipping your breaks, taking shortcuts, ignoring the official methods, trying to do way too many stops or packages per hour.
Basically breaking the rules to get those numbers up.
Exactly. And the sources are blunt. If you're doing those things, you're likely doing everything wrong according to the contract and the company's own procedures. You might think you're a hero, but on paper, you're a liability.
They contrast management's view of a good employee versus the contractual view, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a key point. Management might privately like the results from the person who works off clock, skips breaks, takes shortcuts, gets crazy numbers.
Because it boosts their bottom line.
Right. But they won't usually tell you to break the rules. However, the sources argue that a contractually good employee, the kind the union can defend, is someone who shows up on time, works on the clock, takes all their breaks and lunches, works safely, and follows the methods. That's the standard that matters when push comes to shove.
And the conclusion from this, if you're not working correctly.
The sources put it starkly. If you're cutting corners working off the clock, you are just one computer screen, one glance, one check-in, one fit-for-duty test away from losing your job.
That's sobering. It highlights how vulnerable you make yourself by trying to appease management that way. So thinking about all these pitfalls, making it easy for them, showing you're rattled, trying to work incorrectly to impress them, why is the recommended defense always circling back to? Stick strictly to the rules, follow the methods even if they pressure you not to.
Because it builds your defense. It takes away their easiest path to discipline you. If you are following the contract and the methods to the letter, any attempt they make to discipline you becomes much harder for them to justify.
And easier for the union to fight.
Exactly. It's like putting on armor made of compliance. They might not like it, they might pressure you, but they have a much weaker case if you're doing everything by the book.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we know the landscape, the strategy, what not to do. Now let's get into the positive actions, the TO list. What strategies do the sources say workers should use to protect themselves and fight back effectively?
Right. Moving from defense to offense in a way. The first strategy, and it's hammered home again and again in the sources, is document everything.
Everything. That sounds like a lot. How crucial is it?
Absolutely critical. It's framed as the foundation. Documentation is how you build your case against management, just like they're always trying to build cases against workers. Without records, it's often just your word against theirs.
So what should people be documenting and how? Any practical tips?
Lots of practical tips. First, document your workday. Every day. Keep a logbook, a small notebook. Use a notes app on your phone, whatever works.
What goes in the log?
Start time, end time, breaks, lunch, your stops, pickups. But critically, anything that affects your day or your production. Were you sent off your usual route? Did your work assignment change? Were there delays from construction, traffic, bad weather, equipment problems? Write it down. Date, end time, everything.
So the normal stuff plus all the exceptions and challenges.
Precisely. And use your phone. The sources really push this. Take pictures.
Pictures of what?
DIAD messages from management, especially if they seem harassing or give weird instructions. Take photos of your end-of-day summary screens on the DIAD. Those are objective records.
What about documenting management behavior directly, like instructions or comments?
Yes, definitely. If a supervisor gives you an instruction you think violates the methods, the contract, or seems unsafe, make a note of it immediately. Who said it, when, where, what exactly was said. If you get nasty messages on the DIAD, screenshot or photograph them right away before they vanish.
And interactions, like getting called into the office.
Absolutely. Document any meeting or significant interaction with management. As soon as you can afterwards, while it's fresh, write down everything. Date, time, location, who was there, what was said by each person, what happened.
This seems super important if you suspect retaliation, too.
It is. If you file a grievance, or maybe speak up about a safety issue, and then suddenly your route changes, or you get moved, or they start watching you like a hawk, document the date the change happened. Note what preceded it. The timing can be really strong evidence of retaliation.
Okay, this sounds like serious effort. What's the payoff, besides having evidence for a future grievance?
Well, that's huge, obviously. But the sources suggest another benefit: deterrence. They say management is often less likely to target workers who are known to be organized, prepared, and meticulously documenting their days.
Knowing you're keeping records makes them think twice.
It can. It shows you're not an easy mark. You're prepared to hold them accountable with facts.
Okay, strategy 1, document everything. What's number 2?
Strategy 2. Involve your union representatives immediately.
Don't go it alone.
Definitely not. The sources are clear. The moment you feel harassed, intimidated, or suspect retaliation, tell your shop steward, don't wait for it to get worse.
Get them involved early. And what about the business agent?
Yeah, involve your BA too, especially if it's a serious or ongoing pattern. Keep them in the loop.
What about meetings? If management calls you into the office?
Simple rule from the sources. Always bring your steward with you. Any meeting that could potentially lead to discipline or where they're questioning your work or conduct, steward needs to be there.
Why is that so critical?
Because management's goal in the office is often pressure. They want to isolate you, maybe get you flustered, get you to admit something. Your steward is your witness, your advisor, your advocate. They know the contract, they know your rights. They can stop the meeting if things go sideways.
What if it's not the office? What if a supervisor corners you on the dock or out on your route and starts asking questions?
That's when you use your Weingarten rights. The sources might not always call it that, but they describe the process. If a supervisor starts asking questions that could lead to discipline, you stop them.
How? What do you say?
You state clearly, calmly, I request my union steward be present. I will not answer any questions until my steward is here. That should end the questioning right there. Then you find your steward, or call them ASAP.
And working with coworkers on this.
Huge emphasis on this. Talk to your colleagues. Talk to your steward. Chances are, if you're being targeted, you're not the only one.
You'd rank the number.
Absolutely. Collective action is way more powerful. Plus, you need witnesses.
Back to documentation.
Exactly. Harassment cases often become he said, she said. You need coworkers who saw or heard what happened and are willing to give a statement. Support each other. The sources even say if management tries to isolate you, like pull you aside where no one can hear, you have the right to walk away. Find your steward, or demand they bring a steward to you right then.
Okay, so document everything, involve the union immediately. What's strategy number 3?
Strategy 3 flows right from those. File grievances. Build that paper trail and seek remedies.
So grieving isn't just about fixing one problem, it's about building a record.
That's exactly how the sources frame it. If management is targeting you, harassing you, you have to respond on paper. You need your own documented history of fighting back. Trying to just keep your head down at that point. The sources say it's too late. You're already on their radar.
What should you grieve specifically?
Any instance of harassment, discrimination, any instruction that violates policy or procedure, and definitely any disciplinary action you receive. Use those detailed notes you've been keeping.
Which parts of the contract are key here?
Article 37 of the National Master Agreement comes up a lot. That's the Dignity and Respect Clause, covers harassment, intimidation, over supervision. Also, the general fair day's work for a fair day's pay principle when it's about production harassment.
And discipline, even small stuff. Warning letters.
Absolutely critical advice. Grieve every single warning letter, every disciplinary action, no matter how minor it seems. Why? Because if you don't challenge them, they can be used against you later. Grievance panels, arbitrators, they look at your history. Unchallenged discipline counts against you when they consider termination.
You have to knock down every domino they try to set up.
Precisely. Build your record of challenging their claims.
When you file a grievance for harassment, what should you ask for? What's the remedy?
Besides asking for the harassment to stop, the sources highlight something important. Ask for a record of the incident to be put in your personnel file through the union's process.
And there was a really big update mentioned regarding harassment grievances. Something about money.
Yes, this is huge. The sources emphasize a recent major win at the national panel. They awarded financial penalty pay for harassment. Under the new contract, if a harassment grievance is upheld, the penalty is now 5 days of pay.
5 days. Wow. Up from 3, right?
Up from 3. That's a significant deterrent and remedy. So the advice is very specific. When you file that Article 37 harassment grievance, explicitly ask for the 5 days of penalty pay in your remedy.
And these grievances have a path now.
Yeah, the material says these harassment grievances, if they deadlock at the local or regional level, can go directly to the national panel. So there's a real pathway now to potentially getting that penalty pay awarded.
Okay, let's think about that. Knowing that financial penalties, actual money, are now on the table for proven harassment, and you have to file a grievance to get there, how does that change the game? How does it impact the decision to file and the potential outcome? It really gives the grievance process some teeth, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's not just about getting an apology or making them stop. It's about making it cost them financially. That kind of accountability can genuinely change management behavior over time, you'd hope.
It makes filing seem less like just complaining and more like a strategic action with real consequences. Okay, strategy 4. This one sounds interesting. Put management to work through the grievance procedure.
Yeah, this is more tactical. The idea is, especially if management is hitting you with what seems like frivolous discipline or harassment, use the grievance process itself to make them spend time and effort
How do you do that?
by using all your rights within the process. Maybe prolonging grievance meetings by asking detailed questions. Using your caucus time with your steward effectively to strategize, making them go through all the steps properly.
And there was something about requesting documents.
Yes, Article 4 of the National Master Agreement. It gives the union the right to request documents and information from the company that are reasonably related to the grievance being investigated.
So, if they're giving you grief with lots of little warnings, you respond by making them dig up paperwork for the union's investigation.
That's the tactic described. The sources kind of frame it like this. If a manager is issuing pointless warnings, they're signaling they enjoy paperwork. So give them more paperwork to do. Make them justify their actions, provide data, answer questions.
Turn their tactic back on them.
Exactly. It can tie up their time, force them to be accountable, and maybe, just maybe, deter them from issuing more junk discipline because they know it's going to create a lot of work for them.
Clever. Okay, strategy 5. This feels like the foundation for everything else. Learn your rights and your contract.
Absolutely. The sources use a cool analogy here, like a controlled burn.
Controlled burn.
Yeah. Instead of letting the anger and frustration from harassment just explode,
Yeah.
channel that energy into something productive, educating yourself.
What specifically should people learn?
Learn the company's methods and rules, yes. But most importantly, learn your union contract. Read it, understand it. The sources say time and again, knowing the contract better than management gives you incredible power and leverage.
Because management relies on people not knowing their rights.
Often, yes. That's what the material suggests. Ignorance makes you an easier target.
What parts of the contract are highlighted as especially important?
Well, Article 37 for harassment, obviously. But also the specific discharge language in your local supplement that varies, so you need to know yours. Understand the cardinal infractions, the things they could potentially fire you for on the spot.
Like drinking on the job, unauthorized passengers, those kinds of things.
Usually, yeah. But the sources warn some supplements have weird old ones too, so know what's in your book.
Any other protective articles mentioned?
Article 6 is important. It protects you from discipline based only on GPS or tech data. They need more than just a ping on a map. And Article 12 protects you if someone else uses your DIAD or scanner and makes a mistake.
And understanding just cause is key for fighting discipline.
Absolutely crucial. The sources explain that just cause is the standard management has to meet to discipline or fire you. And it usually requires progressive discipline.
Meaning warnings for the same offense before they escalate.
Generally, yes. Warnings, maybe a suspension, then termination, all for the same type of infraction. This is vital for fighting stacking discipline, which we should definitely talk more about.
Okay, but first, how do people learn all this? The contract can be dense.
Practical advice from the sources. Read the book. Carry it with you. Go to union meetings. Ask questions. Talk to your steward, your BA. Talk to senior members who've been through it. Look for educational workshops or materials from the union.
Treat it like studying for something important.
Because it is. It's your job, your livelihood.
Okay, another reflection point here. How does simply knowing this stuff, knowing the rules, the articles, your rights, how does that shift the power dynamic when a supervisor tries to intimidate you or hit you with discipline? Just having the knowledge.
It changes everything. When they know you know the rules, they can't bluff as easily. They can't just make things up.
Yeah.
They're less likely to violate the contract blatantly because they know you'll catch it, you'll grieve it, and they might lose.
You become less of an easy target for those tactics.
Exactly. Knowledge is leverage. Okay, now let's dig into those two specific challenges you mentioned. Production harassment and stacking discipline. These get special attention in the sources.
Let's start with production harassment. Sounds like a big issue, especially for inside workers. Preload, sorting.
Yeah, the sources talk about how the company expects accuracy, which is fair, but the pressure could go way beyond reasonable. From common sense to nonsense, as one source put it.
So when management starts hammering people with discipline for misloads or missorts, how do you push back effectively?
The sources say you need to challenge the basis of the discipline. Ask questions. Was the employee the only one working that belt or load area?
Could someone else have made the error?
Right. Did a supervisor help? Did another coworker jump in? Did the person start late or leave early? meaning someone else touched that work. Management has to prove you were responsible.
And their records aren't always perfect for individual discipline.
That's what the sources suggest. The tracking knows where the package went, sure. But proving who misloaded it can be tough if multiple people work the area. They often don't use a strict 9-month rule for these errors like other discipline, and the records don't easily isolate individual responsibility in shared work areas.
Plus, as we said, there's no magic accuracy percentage in the contract, just fair day's work.
Correct. They can't just invent a standard and discipline you for not meeting it.
Okay, what about that really tricky situation? Management yells about speed and high numbers, then turns around and disciplines for mistakes. How do you handle those contradictory demands?
The sources recommend a coordinated group response here. If management starts disciplining for errors, misloads, damages, they are essentially signaling that accuracy is now the top priority, regardless of what they're yelling.
So the group adjusts its work.
Yes. The advice is for everyone involved, preloaders, sorters, to slow down deliberately to a pace where they can ensure accuracy. Aim for 0 mistakes, 0 damages. This will naturally lower the production numbers.
And when the supervisors inevitably freak out about the lower numbers?
The recommended response is calm, consistent, and collective. State clearly, I am working as fast as I can while ensuring accuracy because I don't want to receive discipline for errors.
Turn their discipline back on them as your justification for the pace.
Exactly. If they keep demanding speed while also disciplining for errors, the sources say, file Article 37 harassment grievances, citing the conflicting instructions. It becomes very hard for them to discipline you for low production when they just discipline people for errors caused by going too fast.
Makes sense. What if someone genuinely struggles with accuracy?
The sources mention that as a last resort, if training doesn't help, a steward might suggest reassignment to different work before discipline becomes the only option.
Okay, that's a solid approach for production pressure. Now, what about stacking discipline? Define that for us again.
Stacking discipline is described as a management tactic. They issue multiple minor disciplines for different unrelated things, but they do it really close together, one after another.
And the sources call this pure harassment.
Yes, and ticky-tack. Because the individual infractions are usually small potatoes, things that wouldn't normally lead to serious trouble on their own.
Give us that example again.
Like, maybe Monday you get a warning letter for not using your flashers right. Wednesday you get an intent to suspend for not using 3 points of contact on stairs. Friday, maybe an intent to terminate for scanning an info notice twice. See? Different minor things. Bam, bam, bam.
What's the goal? Why do this?
The sources suggest it's a way to overwhelm you, pressure you, maybe get you suspended for a bit, or build a seemingly thick disciplinary file quickly to justify termination. They might target people they think won't fight back hard.
So how do you fight stacking discipline?
The absolute #1 rule from the sources,
Yeah.
grieve. Every single one, immediately.
Grieve the talk with, grieve the warning letter, grieve the intent to suspend, all separately.
Yes. Every single action needs its own grievance, filed promptly. Don't let anything slide.
And what's crucial to put in those grievances?
Specificity. State the exact offense management cited for that specific discipline. Don't just write methods violation. Write alleged failure to use flashers on date, or alleged failure to maintain 3 points of contact on date.
Why is being that specific so critical?
Because of just cause. Remember, just cause usually requires progressive discipline for the same offense. By clearly identifying the different offense in each grievance, you highlight that management is not following progressive discipline. They're just throwing unrelated mud at the wall. It undermines their attempt to build a cumulative case based on dissimilar issues.
And always cite just cause violation too.
Yes, always include that claim. And again, documentation. Keep meticulous records. Keep copies of every grievance you file.
Why the copies?
Because management might try to wiggle out later, claim you didn't file it right or didn't file it on time, get your copy signed, or take a picture of the signed copy when you hand it in. Proof.
Did the sources mention if this works? Does filing every time actually help?
Yes, one example suggested management backed down or withdrew the discipline once the formal grievance was filed. They might not want to hassle, or they know the case is weak. The message is relentless. File, file, file.
What about that attitude some people might have, blaming the person being targeted, calling them low-hanging fruit?
The sources push back hard on that. They argue that pretty much everyone working under this system has a target on their back. It's just a matter of when management decides to focus on you, especially if you slip up on the rules yourself.
So it's not the workers' fault they're being targeted with this tactic.
That's the perspective. Nobody asks for ticky-tack stacking discipline. It's presented as a company strategy. They even float the idea that sometimes local managers are pressured from above to issue more discipline, quotas almost.
Wow. Okay, stacking discipline sounds designed to just bury you in paperwork and stress. How can people stay organized and fight each separate piece effectively when it feels like so much?
It really comes back to those core strategies, doesn't it? Meticulous documentation of each incident, no matter how small. And the discipline of filing a separate grievance for every action. It takes diligence, absolutely. But that organized resistance is what lets you challenge their narrative and expose the pattern. You can't let any piece stand unchallenged.
Chip away at every single one. Got it. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. From understanding the strategy behind harassment to the pitfalls to avoid, the specific tactics management uses, and crucially, the steps workers can take. Let's try to pull this all together.
Yeah, the big picture that comes through from all these sources is pretty empowering, I think. Handling harassment, handling retaliation.
Yeah,
It's not about trying to be invisible by working wrong.
it's the opposite, right?
It's the opposite. It's about protecting yourself by working correctly, knowing your rights cold, and actively using those rights and the union structure.
That theme of information as power really shines through. Know your contract, know the methods, know the grievance process. That's your shield and your sword, seems like. Management banks on ignorance.
Absolutely. And solidarity. Standing with your coworkers, supporting them, having their back, acting together. That makes everyone stronger and harder to pick off individually.
Now, the sources acknowledge, and we should too, that doing all this documenting, filing grievances, standing up to pressure, it takes effort. It can be stressful.
No doubt. It's not easy.
But the key message is, you're not alone. There are tools, resources, support systems through your union, through your fellow members, exactly like the ones outlined in the materials we've gone through today.
It takes vigilance, yeah? And preparation. And looking out for each other.
Definitely. So let's recap the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive based purely on these sources. First, understand the game harassment is often a strategy, management by stress. Second, avoid the traps. Don't make it easy for them by braiding rules. Don't show them their pressure works. Don't work incorrectly trying to impress them. Third, document everything. Your day, interactions, instructions, potential retaliation, meticulously. Fourth, union up immediately. Stewart, BA, get them involved at the first sign of trouble. Never go into the office alone. Fifth, file grievances strategically. Every single time. Challenge everything, and specifically ask for those penalties, like the 5 days pay for harassment under Article 37. Sixth, learn your rights. Know Article 37, Article 6, Article 12, your supplements, discharge rules, cardinal sins, just cause, know it cold. And seventh, solidarity. Stand with your coworkers.
And remember, this knowledge, these actions, they're not just for fighting back when things are bad. They're about protecting your job and your safety every day by working correctly and being prepared before management turns up the heat.
It's about building that foundation of compliance and preparedness. Okay, one final thought for you, the listener, to chew on as you go about your day, something from these sources. We've heard how vital documentation and knowing the rules are, so how can you start weaving those habits into your daily routine now, even when things feel calm? What's one small, concrete step you could take today? Maybe just find your contract. Start a simple log in a notebook. Talk to a coworker about something you heard here. How can you better prepare yourself or help prepare someone else for potential issues down the road?
Because that preparation, that's a form of power in itself.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We really hope unpacking these sources has given you some valuable clarity and practical steps you can use.
And remember, this deep dive was sponsored by the Siblings of Solidarity of Local 509.
Until next time, love, peace, most importantly, solidarity.